Hello, guys. Welcome to the 515 podcast. And I am so sorry for being gone so long. I was sick as hell. Like, it sucked. I was sick, and then I was depressed because I was sick. It was a whole thing. But while I was getting over it at the peak of my, healing, I watched Wuthering Heights, the new one, with Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi. Holy crap. I watched Wuthering Heights last night, and it wrecked me. I cried. I got turned on. And then I sat there like, what the hell was that? I'm an English major, so I know Wuthering Heights. But this movie felt less like a classic and more like watching an old version of myself on screen, to be honest. So today I want to ask a question out loud with you. Is this love? Or is it a trauma bond? If you haven't read or seen Wuthering Heights, it's basically about two people, Kathy and Heathcliff, who grow up together in this harsh, isolated environment. They're obsessed with each other. They claim each other, and they also destroy each other. On screen, it's shot like this epic love story, stormy moors, dramatic kisses, with the same soul lines. But underneath, it's neglect, cruelty, and obsession. It's less Notebook and more nervous system chaos. Also, there's Charlie XCX, which does a great job, which, there's like modernization with it, but also classical shit. Oh, God. You guys, it's a very lovely movie. She did well. Anyway, as I watched, my body wasn't thinking of classic literature. It was thinking, this feels like my ex-boyfriend. Not my ex-husband, but my ex-boyfriend. The one prior to my ex-husband. So let's talk about that. There was a time in my life where I thought the level of intensity was love. I'm going to call him Chad because I don't want to give out his name. I'm all about anonymity here. With Chad, things got grotesque. There was cheating. There were emotional highs and lows that made me feel like my skin was turned inside out, and I stayed. Yeah, I stayed. Not just stayed. I thought this was some kind of fated connection. We're technically friends now. I admit that, and I allow that. I'm not in love with him. I'm not trying to go back. But there are still wounds that fester. And watching Wuthering Heights, it was like seeing that old bond played out in Victorian drag, to be honest. It was intense. I cried so hard. Here's how I'm starting to tell the difference now as someone who has lived both, my marriage of abuse and this trauma bond. A trauma bond feels like a drug. It's high highs, low lows. Your whole body is buzzing. You feel like you can't breathe without this person. Healthy love can still be passionate, but underneath it, there's a sense of safety. You can relax. You're not constantly bracing for the next blow. With Chad and with Kathy and Heathcliff, it was chaos. Beautiful, poetic words one day, betrayals the next. The intermittent reward, being hurt, and then suddenly pulled close, kept me hooked. Healthy love doesn't require you to survive the roller coaster to get crumbs of connection. In a trauma bond, I abandon myself to keep the connection. I override my boundaries, minimize the cheating, explain away the cruelty. I did. I really did. In healthy love, my self-respect is part of the relationship, not a threat to it. So when I watch Wuthering Heights and my body reacts, I'm not seeing some grand love story. I'm seeing two people locked in a trauma bond and a younger version of me who thought that was the best she could do. I didn't stay with Chad because I was stupid. No, I stayed because my nervous system learned early that intensity equals importance, that being chosen after being hurt means I've won something. Even now, as a grown woman hosting a podcast about self-reclamation, there are parts of me that still ache over how grotesque it got, how much I tolerated, and how much I turned against myself to keep the connection. So when I say the wounds fester, I'm talking about that, the shame of who I became in that dynamic, and the grief for the girl who thought that was love. And just to be clear, this isn't the same as my marriage to my ex-husband, which operated more like slow, patterned abuse. My ex-husband was the long-term erosion within a short term, if you can even say that. It's complicated. Both hurt very much. They just wore different masks. Here's the good news. Once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Wuthering Heights stops being this aspirational romance and becomes a cautionary tale. You can enjoy the art and still say, that's not what I want anymore. Healthy love for me now looks a lot less cinematic and a lot more grounded. It looks like I don't have to betray myself to keep you. My nervous system can breathe. We repair without destroying each other. And as an English major turned survivor podcaster, I get to use stories like this as mirrors, not maps. If you're listening to this and realizing there's a Chad in your past or your present, I'm not here to shame you. I'm here to say, I've been there. I've cried over fictional couples that look suspiciously like my own bad decisions. Maybe your homework this week is simple. Pick one story, one movie, one show that hits too hard and ask, is this love or is this my old trauma bond pattern? And what would it look like to choose safety instead? On this podcast, we're not reclaiming our lives. We're not just reclaiming our lives. We're reclaiming our stories, our tropes, our idea of what love is supposed to feel like. We're allowed to change the script. Take a deep breath, unclench your jaw, and remember, intense doesn't always mean true. And I highly recommend watching that movie. It's really great. It's fun. But also you probably might cry. But sometimes crying is good. So, see you on the next one. Bye.